Pause here, my beloved child, because even as you breathe, a message is forming somewhere right now, quietly, urgently, like heat rising off pavement before the storm breaks. You have felt the shift, haven't you? Not in grand signs. In small interruptions. In the way your name seems to appear where it shouldn't. In the way your chest tightens at ordinary sounds, as if your soul recognizes footsteps you cannot yet hear. But that's not what changed everything. It began in public, bright, noisy, ordinary, where people pretend they aren't lonely. Your soulmate stood in a coffee shop line that smelled like burnt sugar and wet coats. The windows were fogged from bodies and weather. A bell above the door kept ringing, 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 as strangers entered with their cold air and their practiced faces. They weren't thinking about you. They were trying not to. They were staring at a menu they already knew, doing that thing the mind does when it wants to look busy so it doesn't have to feel. Their phone was in their hand, screen dark, thumb hovering over nothing. And then, without warning, the barista called out a name. Your name. Not you. Not your voice. Just the syllables, tossed into the room like a coin. Next. Your soulmate flinched hard enough that the person behind them noticed. Sorry, yeah, just a black coffee. They meant to be calm. They meant to be practical. Fear has always dressed itself in their life like a sensible jacket, neutral colors, good stitching, no visible trembling. Perhaps it's coincidence, they told themselves. Yet their hands went cold anyway. Because there are coincidences, and then there are moments that feel like someone reached into your chest and squeezed, just to see if you're still alive. Not this time. They stepped aside with their cup, steam rising, and they looked for the source of that name as if it could be found under tables, behind coats, inside the foam. You weren't there. And that absence hit them harder than your presence ever did. Here is a detail you haven't considered, my child. Sometimes the soul reacts not to what is in front of it, but to what is approaching. Like a dog that lifts its head before the car even turns onto the street. They left the coffee shop too quickly, the bell above the door snapping behind them like a warning. Outside, the day was a dull metal color. Cars hissed on wet pavement. Their breath came out in thin, uneven clouds, and they walked without choosing a direction, just moving, because staying still felt like admitting something. They told themselves they were fine. But their phone lit up with a notification, some harmless reminder, some calendar demand, and the glow on their palm looked like a small accusation. Then something happened that made their throat tighten. They saw, across the street, an old storefront they had passed 100 times without noticing. A little metaphysical shop wedged between a nail salon and a discount electronics place. The kind of shop that sells incense and crystals to people who don't want to admit they're desperate. In the window, a hand-painted sign, "Readings today." They didn't believe in it. And yet their feet crossed the street anyway, as if pulled by a tide they couldn't see. Perhaps it was just curiosity. Yet your soulmate's heart was already running ahead, like a child sprinting toward a locked door. Inside, the air was thick with sandalwood and something sharper, like cloves crushed between fingers. The light was low. Wind chimes trembled even though there was no wind. A woman sat behind a small table, cards stacked neatly like a controlled chaos. Your soulmate tried to smile like an adult with a schedule. The psychic didn't smile back. She looked at them the way a nurse looks at an X-ray before speaking. "Sit," she said, and her voice was flat, not theatrical. Your soulmate sat. And my beloved child, the moment the first card turned over, the psychic went pale. Not pale in a dramatic way. Pale like the color drains from fruit when it's left too long in the sun. Pale like a candle that's about to go out. She stared at the spread, then at your soulmate, then back at the spread again, as if hoping the symbols would rearrange themselves into something easier. "I can't read this." Your soulmate blinked. Their mouth opened, then closed, because they didn't know which part of that sentence to grab first. "What do you mean you can't?" The psychic's fingers hovered above the cards like they were hot. Her eyes looked suddenly wet, and she swallowed as if she had tasted metal. "My dear," she whispered, and her voice broke on the edge, "this isn't about your future. It's about what you already broke." She pushed the cards back into a stack with both hands, too fast, too firm, like she was trying to erase what she saw. "Please. Go." Your soulmate stood up too quickly. The chair scraped. The wind chimes trembled again. The psychic wouldn't meet their eyes. And as your soulmate reached for the door, she said one more thing, so quiet it nearly disappeared into the incense smoke. "Someone is leaving. And you will not get infinite chances to become honest." Then she turned her head away. Your soulmate walked out into the daylight like a person waking from anesthesia, aware of pain but not sure where it's coming from. But that wasn't the moment that broke them. What broke them was how your name returned in their mind afterward, steady and relentless, like a song stuck on the same three notes, beautiful, unbearable, impossible to ignore. They tried to reason it away. They told themselves, "You're busy. You moved on. You don't need this." They told themselves, "Silence is cleaner. Silence doesn't risk rejection. Silence keeps dignity intact." Yet what if silence is not dignity, my child? What if it is just fear wearing perfume? The subtle shift you felt in the connection, the way the air changed, the way dreams got heavier, that was the thread being pulled taut. Not to pull you backward. To see if anything is still holding. Because your soulmate has been holding back for one reason that sounds noble when spoken out loud: practicality. Work. Timing. Healing. Not wanting to complicate your life. But beneath that neat vocabulary was something smaller and more animal. They were afraid you would look at them clearly, and decide they were not worth the risk. There is a detail you haven't considered. They were afraid that if they spoke, you would finally answer with the truth they have been dodging. In their mind, your voice is not soft anymore. In their mind, you finally say what you have been polite enough not to say. Why now? You hurt me. Don't come back with poetry, come back with proof. And each imagined sentence hits them like a glass dropped on tile, sharp, final, impossible to put back together. They went home that day with coffee they didn't drink and questions they didn't want. They moved through their apartment like someone searching for something they lost years ago in a drawer that no longer exists. Night came, and with it, that private hour when the world quiets enough for the heart to speak plainly. Dim lamp. Curtains half closed. The city outside blurred into a smear of headlights and rain. Their phone became the only real light in the room, cold glow on knuckles, on cheekbones, on the small tension at the corner of their mouth. They opened your contact. Then closed it. Opened it again. Then put the phone face down like it was burning their skin. Perhaps tomorrow, they told themselves. Yet tomorrow has been their favorite lie. But then something happened that made their hands go cold again. A memory came, not a dramatic one, my beloved child. Not fireworks, not declarations. A tiny moment. They were late that day. The air smelled like pavement after a sudden shower. You had been waiting under the edge of an awning, shoulders slightly hunched, trying to look patient even though your eyes kept checking the street. When they finally arrived, breathless, apologizing, you didn't punish them. You didn't make a show of your disappointment. You just reached into your bag and pulled out an extra scarf. You offered it like it was nothing. No guilt. No performance. Just care. And your fingers brushed theirs for half a second, warm, steady, and you said, simple as water, it's cold. Take it. That was it. That was the moment they realized they loved you. Not because you were perfect. Because you were consistent. Because your kindness didn't ask permission. Because you gave warmth the way the sun gives warmth, without needing applause. And it terrified them. Because love like that demands a mirror. And when they looked into the mirror you held without trying, they saw themselves, guarded, calculated, always one step away from leaving first. Then something in them whispered a question they could not outrun. What if I waited too long? My child, that question is not romantic. It is a reckoning. They sat up in bed, phone in hand, thumb hovering above your name like a person hovering above a confession. They started to type. Then stopped. They imagined your eyes reading it. They imagined you exhaling, tired. They imagined you showing the message to no one, because you have learned how to carry your own heart privately. And they felt, for the first time, the weight of their silence, not their intention, but its impact. They never meant to punish you. They never meant to make you feel like you were too much for asking for clarity. But their silence did it anyway. It's like leaving a glass of water on a radiator, my beloved child. You don't mean to change it. You don't mean to ruin it. You just forget it's there, and then one day you taste it and realize something vital has been altered. Your soulmate began replaying moments you may have already archived. Times you checked your phone, pretending you weren't hoping. Times you said, "It's fine," with that tiny pause that meant it wasn't. Times you tried to act casual, because you didn't want to be the one who needed more. Their stomach turned, because they realized something: you didn't need their perfection. You needed their honesty. And then, because the world is cruel in its timing, external pressure arrived. Not a spiritual sign. Not a mystical omen. A realistic urgency trigger, sharp and ordinary. The next morning at work, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone microwaved something that smelled like onions and regret. Your soulmate tried to focus on a screen, tried to be productive, tried to be normal. A coworker leaned over the partition with that casual tone people use when they're about to drop news. You know they're moving, right? Your soulmate's breath caught. The words didn't fit into the shape of their day. What? Yeah. Big opportunity. I heard it's soon. Soon. Soon as a blade. Their mind did the math in seconds. How many days have I wasted? How many moments did I tell myself I was being wise? Their hands trembled on the keyboard. A cursor blinked on the screen like a heartbeat they couldn't control. A friend noticed their face. You look like you saw a ghost. Your soulmate swallowed hard. I think I just did. My beloved child, this is where the stakes rise. Because it is one thing to be afraid in a world where time feels endless. It is another thing to be afraid when a door might close quietly, without drama, without warning, without a final scene. They left work early with an excuse that didn't match their voice. They drove without music. Red lights felt personal. Every stop sign felt like the universe holding them in place while something slipped away. By the time they got home, the sky was bruised with evening. They stood in their kitchen, still wearing their shoes, and their body finally did what it had been postponing. They broke. Not elegantly. Not in a single tear sliding down a cheek like in films. They pressed their palm to their mouth to keep from making a sound that would scare even them. Their shoulders shook. Their eyes burned. I protected myself, they whispered to no one. And my child, that sentence was true. But it wasn't innocent. Because protecting yourself becomes cruelty the moment it requires someone else to carry the consequence. They thought of you packing boxes, folding clothes, closing drawers, letting go. They imagined you doing it calmly, because you have learned how to survive disappointment without advertising it. They slid down against the cabinet and sat on the floor, head tipped back, staring at the ceiling like it might offer instructions. Then their phone vibrated. It was their friend, the one who has watched them pretend for years that they are fine. They answered with a voice that tried to sound normal and failed. "Where are you?" the friend asked. "At home." A beat. Then, direct as a surgeon, "Do you love them?" Your soulmate closed their eyes. Their throat tightened. Yes. There. The word finally existed in the air. Not in their chest only. Not in their private fantasies only. Yes. The friend exhaled, and their voice softened, not with pity, but with the blunt kindness of someone who refuses to let you hide. Then stop acting like your fear is noble. Silence. And then the line that became the thesis, the one your soulmate would replay later like a verdict: they needed honesty, not your careful silence. My beloved child, let that sentence land in you, too. Not to make you chase. Not to make you soften prematurely. But to sharpen your discernment. Because love that is real does not require you to beg for basic clarity. Love that is real shows up with actions, consistency, and accountability. Words aren't enough. They got off the call and stared at your chat thread, still unopened. Still untouched. Like a museum exhibit labeled, "Do Not Disturb." Then something happened that made their skin prickle. They remembered the psychic's face. That pale refusal. This isn't about your future. It's about what you already broke. Your soulmate stood up and walked into their bedroom as if moving through water. They sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, and opened your messages. The screen filled with history. Old jokes. Small plans. Half-finished conversations. Your kindness threaded through the words like light through curtains. And then they scrolled. Slow. Slower. Until they reached the message that stopped them so hard they forgot to blink. A single line from you, dated weeks ago, sent late at night, when your defenses were probably tired. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't accuse. It was worse than accusation because it was honest. I don't know where I stand with you anymore. My child, that sentence is the sound of someone setting down a heavy box after carrying it alone for too long. Your soulmate's chest tightened like a fist. Their thumb hovered over the text field. They began to type. Draft 1, short. Hey. They stared at it. Deleted. Too small. Too cowardly. Draft 2, medium. I've been thinking about you. Are you okay? They swallowed. Deleted. Too polite. Too safe. A bandage over a fracture. Draft 3, long, careful, explanatory, the kind of message that tries to sound reasonable so it doesn't have to sound guilty. I'm sorry I've been distant. Work has been intense, and I've been trying to get my head straight. I didn't want to bring you into my stress. They read it back and felt sick. Because it still placed the focus on them. Deleted. Draft 4, risky, raw, too honest to hide behind. I love you. I've loved you. And I've been scared of what that asks of me. Their breath caught. Their hands trembled. Their eyes stung like they were staring into smoke. They didn't delete it immediately. They just sat with it. Almost. Then they imagined you reading, "I love you," after all this time. They imagined the anger it might ignite. The hope it might awaken against your will. And they realized, love confessed without change is just another way to take. So they backspaced slowly, each click like a small punishment. Not this. Not yet. A fifth draft began, different. Not pretty. Not romantic. Accountable. It looked like this: I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. They paused, throat tight. They kept going. I disappeared when I should have been clear. I told myself I was being practical, but I was just afraid. I see what my silence did to you. I'm sorry. If you want no contact, I will respect it. If you're willing, I want to earn trust with consistent actions, not promises. Their body reacted like truth was a physical thing, shoulders shaking, jaw clenched, heart hammering. Then something happened that they did not expect. A small notification appeared at the top of the chat when they tried to scroll up. You had changed your settings. Not blocked, exactly. Restricted. Your profile photo wasn't visible anymore. Your last seen was gone. The familiar signs of access, those tiny digital comforts, had been removed. It was a restrained twist, my beloved child, but it landed like a door quietly locking. You hadn't made a scene. You had simply adjusted your life so their indecision couldn't keep poking at your nervous system. Your soulmate stared at the screen as if it had spoken aloud. They tried to call. 1 ring. 2. Then the call ended with a soft, final note. A prompt appeared, call failed. They tried again, pulse loud in their ears. Call failed. They stared at the phone, and their mind did what minds do when they are cornered, it panicked. Did you change your number? Did you set a boundary? Did you decide that access is earned and they did not earn it? My beloved child, this is important, your boundaries are holy. Not as a punishment. As protection. You don't chase. You don't beg. You can listen without surrendering. And if someone arrives with beautiful words but no pattern of change, you are allowed to stay still. Pause. Your soulmate pressed the phone to their forehead and whispered your name like an apology that didn't know where to go. They weren't angry at you. They were angry at the time they wasted. Angry at the way they treated your tenderness like it would always be available, like a store that stays open late no matter how many times you show up near closing. They opened the chat again and stared at the message field. They reread your line, I don't know where I stand with you anymore. And for the first time, they answered it, not to you yet, but in themselves. You stand in the place where truth should have been. They began typing again, hands unsteady. A new draft. Cleaner. More direct. Less self-protective. They wrote, I can't undo what I did, but I can stop doing it. Their throat bobbed with a hard swallow. They added, if you've moved on, I won't interfere. If you haven't, I'm willing to do the uncomfortable work, show up consistently, accept your pace, and be accountable without asking you to soothe me. They stopped, because that last part mattered. Without asking you to soothe me. Because how many times have you been asked, quietly, indirectly, to make someone else comfortable with the pain they caused you? Not this time. Then the suspense became measurable. 30 seconds. They stared at the screen, waiting for any sign that the message would even go through. 2 minutes. Their thumb hovered above the send arrow, trembling. Sweat gathered in the hollow of their palm. The room felt too small for their heartbeat. 10 minutes. They hadn't moved. Their coffee from earlier sat untouched on the counter, cold now, like a metaphor with teeth. Outside, a car alarm chirped once and stopped. Somewhere in the building, someone laughed, carefree, unaware. Your soulmate finally pressed send. The message did not fly away like a bird. It sat there for a breathless beat. Then a small symbol appeared. Not delivered. Not seen. Just a spinning attempt. A delay. A quiet maybe. And my beloved child, in that tiny pause, your soulmate understood what you have been learning: you cannot force access. You cannot purchase trust with urgency. You cannot demand a response as payment for finally doing what should have been done weeks ago. Soft breath, they watched the screen like it was a hospital monitor. Their minds started negotiating with the universe. Please let it deliver. Please let it not be too late. Please let them at least know I tried. And in the middle of that, another memory rose. One more small moment, painfully specific. You were sitting across from them at a cheap table, the surface scratched with old graffiti. There was a tiny candle between you, trapped in a glass jar, flame leaning whenever someone opened the door. You were talking about something simple, an errand, a family story, a plan for next week. And you laughed at yourself, a short laugh, embarrassed and honest. Your soulmate had looked at you and felt an unbearable tenderness, the kind that makes you want to protect someone from every sharp edge in the world. But then you looked up and caught them staring. And in that instant, you didn't flirt. You didn't perform. You just softened, eyes steady, face open, and you let them see that you would actually love them if they stepped forward. That was the terror. Not your beauty. Your sincerity. It felt like standing on the edge of a lake at night. You can't see how deep it is, only that it's real, and if you jump, you will have to swim. So they didn't jump. They smiled, they joked, they kept it light. They chose the shallow end. And now the bill came due. Their phone buzzed, just once, like a small pulse. Their stomach dropped. A system message. Not from you. Just the phone trying to reconnect, trying to make sense of signal and settings and distance. They opened the chat again. The message still wasn't marked as delivered. They tapped your name at the top and saw what they feared: your contact details were limited. The number they had might not even be yours anymore. They held the phone like it was both a weapon and a prayer. Then they did something they have avoided for a long time. They recorded a voice note. Their thumb hovered over the microphone icon. They pressed and held. The timer began counting up in the corner. 1 second. 2. 3. Their voice came out rough. "It's me," they said, and the sound of it made their eyes burn. "I don't know if this will reach you. I don't know what I'm allowed to be to you anymore. But I needed to tell you." They stopped. Because they realized "I needed" was still centering themselves. They swallowed, started again, still holding the button, still recording, the seconds climbing like a staircase they couldn't climb back down. "You didn't deserve my silence," they said. "You didn't deserve to wonder. I love you, and I handled that love like it was something to hide instead of something to honor. I'm not asking you to fix this with one reply. I'm asking you to let me prove change over time, if you choose to allow it." They paused, breath shaking, and added the simplest, most dangerous sentence: "Just tell me if I still have permission to try." Their eyes closed. They released the button. The voice note sat there, unsent, a small bar of sound waiting like a held breath. "And now, my beloved child, listen carefully, this is where your power stays intact. You are not required to answer because someone finally became brave. You are not required to reopen a wound because someone finally noticed it was bleeding. You can receive a message without returning to the old pattern. You can say yes slowly. You can say no cleanly. You can say nothing at all. Because boundaries are not bitterness. They are wisdom with a backbone. Your soulmate stared at that unsent voice note. Their thumb hovered over the arrow. They imagined you seeing it at the wrong moment, while driving, while packing, while laughing with someone new, while finally feeling calm. They imagined the way their confession could pull on you like undertow. And for the first time, they didn't want to pull. They wanted to be worthy. So they didn't send it immediately. They sat there in the dim room, curtains breathing slightly with the heater's hum, phone glow painting their face in a lonely blue. Time passed in numbers again. 30 seconds. They lifted their thumb. 2 minutes. They lowered it. 10 minutes. Their eyes stayed on the screen until their vision blurred.